Brother Trevor Teel is going to come and give us some concluding thoughts and a call to action. Trevor is 30 years old. He and his wife Kelsey have been married for 10 years. They have 2 boys, Kyson and Lincoln. They live in Canyon, Texas, and meet with the Amarillo Church of Christ. So let's give Trevor our attention as he brings his thoughts to us this afternoon.
But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is likened to a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself, and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh in the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. We've heard inspiring presentations on how Christ continues to change the world today, and our opportunities and responsibilities to be involved as doers of the work and not hearers only, because sadly the Great Commission often becomes the Great Omission. If we were to write a response letter to Jesus, it might read, "Dear Jesus Christ, your proposal is both interesting and challenging. However, due to a shortage of personnel as well as other personal and financial factors, we do not feel we can accept your challenge at this time. A committee was appointed to study the feasibility of your plan, but instead found all the countless reasons your idea simply won't work. We did consider making a donation, but resources have already been allocated to other projects. Your efforts to save the lost will be in our thoughts and prayers. Should we have a change of heart, we'll get back to you." That was supposed to be a little bit humorous. Nobody laughed. We might not need this speech. But I think often the Great Commission becomes the Great Omission. And I hope we understand that the Great Commission is not an option to be considered, but rather it is a command that we must obey. Remember, our scope is global. All the world, every creature in every nation. It seems to me the only way we can accomplish such a daunting task is to utilize and implement a multiplication strategy where we involve and include the abilities, opportunities, and resources of every single Christian, not just a few. We have here an illustration of growth by addition versus growth by multiplication. In the addition strategy, you have a few people doing all the work, and they're doing a great job. They're doing their part to lead people to Jesus. Very impressive number for individuals. On the other hand, you have this multiplication strategy. It starts off a lot slower. You have somebody going out and evangelizing and discipling one person each year, taking time throughout the year to disciple them, get them plugged in. There's higher retention. And then training them and equipping them to go out and replicate that process. And while it starts off a lot slower, 2, 4, 8, 16, within a few years it explodes past the addition strategy due to the power of compounding. And within 30 years, 1 billion people have heard the gospel. I believe that was a strategy the first century church employed that allowed them to be so successful, taking the gospel to the entire known world within 30 years. Acts 8 verse 4, "Therefore they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word." 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, "And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also." Beatitude is often like the football player who was asked by his coach what he would do if they had the ball on the other team's 1-yard line with 1 second left, needing a touchdown to win the game. And the player said, "Coach, I'd move down to the end of the bench so I could have a better view." And sometimes we have thousands of spectators. They're interested, they're just not involved. They're fans, they're just not followers. I want to tell you, Christianity is not a spectator sport. And let's not adopt this clergy mentality that's plagued Christendom where we begin to think, evangelism is just for the evangelist, or discipling is just for the elders, or giving is just for the rich people. Guess what? That's us. And the truth is, evangelism and giving are for those who love God with everything they have and who love their neighbor as themselves. You see, the future of the church and the future of the lost is depending upon each generation stepping up and doing its part, evangelistically and financially. And where will we be? Because seed in the barn, lamp under a bushel, salt in the shaker, talent in the ground, money in the bank, not going to get it done. Are we hard ground, rocky ground, thorny ground, or are we good ground that brings forth much fruit? Did we do our part? Or did we just build these nice, fancy buildings that are empty in 100 years because we were just concerned with holding services and not going out and saving souls? Brethren, our mission is not just to come to the building and turn on the air conditioning. And if we're not careful, instead of fishing and supporting the fishing, we just build fish tanks. Let's not be satisfied with growth that is only due to biological evangelism. And I believe in biological evangelism with all of my being. I'm going to evangelize my children more than anywhere else. That's where it starts. But we should be growing more than just having babies and having physical births or member exchanges where we move fish around to different tanks. Did we do our part? One of the best things we can do for these foreign works is to have growing, thriving, dynamic, evangelistic congregations in the United States. And by growing membership, we grow our involvement, we grow our contribution, which grows our global support and our global presence. But we all have our excuses, just like those given in the parable of the great banquet in Luke 14. Maybe I bought a piece of land and the excuse of materialism and worldliness that distracts us from our primary purpose and calling. Maybe I've got more important business to tend to, or maybe I've married a wife and we hide behind our family. I want to tell myself that I've got a family, I've got children is not a valid excuse for taking a 25-year hiatus from evangelism and from giving. Maybe we don't feel equipped, we don't feel capable. That was the excuse Moses gave initially. And the truth maybe is sometimes we never cared enough to learn how. Because God used a donkey to speak to Balaam, a sheep hide to speak to Gideon, fish to speak to Jonah, a rooster to speak to Peter, and He can use you, He can use me, He can use us to speak to the world, but we got to be willing to speak up. We can't just smile and wave and be a nice guy at work and out magically pops a New Testament Christian practicing New Testament Christianity. That gives us credibility and opportunity as we shine our lights, but we got to be prepared to give and to give an answer of the reason of the hope that is in us with meekness and fear. Maybe we're scared, or maybe we're selfish and self-absorbed. Maybe we don't really appreciate what Christ has done for us because we see those who understood and appreciated what Christ did for them, they couldn't help but proclaim it, starting with their family and friends. That's a natural response. If you find a great product or a great deal, you can't help but go tell others about it. And I want to tell you, if we were as passionate about supporting this product and selling this product to the world and to our family and friends as we were to sell other products to the world and our family and friends, we'd turn the world upside down. You see, when I'm not successful as a salesperson during a school or team fundraiser, the football team might not get new football jerseys. But our business is life and death, and so we need to have a sense of urgency. So maybe sometimes I just don't really believe what I claim to. Because I have believed, therefore my response have I spoken. We also believe, therefore we speak. Atheists observed, if I believed in heaven and hell as much as you Christians claim you do, I would crawl on my hands and knees across burning deserts to save one person. And when we do our part to do that, to take the gospel to at least one person, those that we know, when we send it to those that we don't know, we proclaim to the world that every life, every soul matters. No matter what socioeconomic status, what side of the tracks they live on, their history, their race, ethnicity, or nationality. And what we do proves what we actually believe. Excuses should not be connected to something so wonderful and so precious to what Christ did for us. In Ezekiel 3, we see how God views watchmen who do not fulfill their responsibilities to warn others of impending danger. It reminds me of a bridge collapse that occurred on I-40 in eastern Oklahoma, near where I lived and grew up, over Memorial Day weekend in 2002. You might remember this. I've traveled over this bridge countless times. Right before, and was supposed to travel over it the day after this happened, a captain of a barge blacked out, struck a support pillar. You can see the results. Vehicles plummeted 70 feet, many to their deaths. There were a couple of fishermen in a fishing boat on the river who saw this unfold, and it was during a Jimmy Houston fishing tournament. You can tell it's a genuine Oklahoma story. And they frantically tried to warn people, all to no avail, and finally, in desperation, they took out a flare gun from their emergency kit, fired a flare, struck the windshield of a semi who hit the brakes, jackknifed, came to a stop, blocked traffic, and they began to fish people out of the water. That's exactly who we need to be. Watchmen and fishers of men. We know a whole lot of people the world over who need a flare to their windshield, but we got to be willing to pull the trigger. This Romans 10 principle we've been talking about all day, if New Testament Christians don't support New Testament evangelism, who's going to do it? If we don't send the New Testament preachers, who's going to do it? And what will the lost hear? If New Testament Christians don't tell who they know about New Testament Christianity, who's going to do it? Think about people in your life who maybe know nobody else in the church except for you. You might be their only link to New Testament Christianity. If we don't step up and do something, who's going to do it? Who's going to tell them? Research indicates that 75 to 90% of people are converted by someone they know. 34 of 40 times people were brought to Jesus in the New Testament. They are brought to Jesus by someone they knew, thus seeming to confirm that statistic. Yet we walk around in these fields of white with this apathetic, defeatist attitude, wondering, what can I do? What can I give? Does it matter? Does it make a difference? And Jesus says, lift up your eyes, open your eyes. We know a lot of people the world over driving off the proverbial cliff as we sometimes do absolutely nothing about it, standing on the sidelines, wishing and hoping something will change, wishing and hoping they might be saved. The Lord bless you and keep you. God bless you. Go with God. Be warm and filled. What does it profit? We'll pray for you. Boy went fishing with his dad, and they put out lines, and they'd caught a lot of fish. And the boy said, Dad, I knew we were going to catch a lot of fish. He said, how'd you know that? I prayed about it. Put out lines, checked in the next day, they hadn't caught anything. The boy said, Dad, I knew we weren't going to catch any fish. Well, how'd you know that? I didn't pray about it. Why didn't you pray about it? Because we forgot to bait the hooks. This boy understood a principle that's vitally important. If we're going to pray for evangelism, if we're going to pray for our family and friends and neighbors and coworkers, those we know, those we don't know, evangelists in the United States, evangelists throughout the world, the lost, we need to do our part to bait the hook. Jesus taught us to pray for our daily bread, but we understand when we sit down at the supper table, we don't pray and miraculously a loaf of Wonder Bread plops down on the table. God expects us to go and work and be the natural mediums by which God, working in us and through us, can answer these prayers. You know, stewardship is one of the most important and often discussed subjects in the Bible. Stewardship about our money, other resources and blessings God's entrusted to us, relationships, opportunities, time. And yet when somebody gets up and talks about financial stewardship or our money, we get a little defensive. Maybe we roll our eyes and think, well, here we go again. Well, here we go again. Half of the parables of Jesus were about stewardship. 1 in 6 verses in the New Testament was about stewardship. Rich young ruler, nothing wrong with being rich if we'll control our riches and not let our riches control us. You know, we see scriptural blessers or givers being blessed by God and unscriptural givers being cursed by God throughout the Bible. Malachi 3, well, man robbed God, and they said, how are we robbing you? He said, in tithes and offerings. He said, I wanted to bless you so much, it was overflowing. You didn't even have room enough to receive it. But you are cursed because you have robbed me. Haggai 1, God's people were rebuked as they sat in their nice, fancy, comfortable houses in the house of God, laid wasted and in neglect, and he said, consider your ways. Maybe we need to consider our ways. Maybe we need to take this Malachi challenge and trust and discover that it truly is more blessed to give than to receive. Because often we're like that little girl who was given $2 bills from her mother, the two that Michael threw away earlier, and told $1 belongs to God, the other dollar you can do whatever you want with. And as they walked toward the church building, the West Texas wind blew one of the dollars out of her hand, and the girl said, there goes God's dollar. But people that are giving and generous are the happiest people on the earth. They're also the wisest as they realize they can give away what they ultimately can't keep anyway to gain what they can never lose. It's the best investment of all because the only thing we take with us is what we gave away in service to God and service to other people. There won't be a U-Haul chasing my hearse on the way to the cemetery. And sometimes we let go of the things that we should be holding on to, and we hold on too tightly to things that we should be willing to let go of. Paul told the Corinthians when they gave to help those in need in Judea, it was proof of their love. And I wonder if we took a long, hard look, if we considered our ways and looked at our budgets and our schedules, if we would find proof of our love for God, our love for the church, and our love for our fellow man. You know, often, as Van said, we are moved to action by physical needs because we can see them. And we ought to have compassion. It ought to bother us. Maybe we're even moved to action by suffering animals. We see the commercials where the dogs are homeless and starving on TV. We have a fish in our house, so it hasn't convicted us yet. But often we're spiritually indifferent and apathetic about the spiritual starvation all around us, at our own backyard, at our doorstep. And maybe it's because we have the same attitude about our mission as the world has. I'm not saying that building structures, providing medical care, reducing poverty levels, those are great works. And we need to be trying to do those things. But if we stop there, we have stopped short of the end goal of preaching Christ crucified. We go to India and we see all these people suffering. We see people that need a meal. We can't feed all of them. Even if we did, you know what's going to happen? They're going to be hungry tomorrow. If we gave every one of them a house, you know what they still would need? A home in heaven. You know what's going to happen? Ultimately, they're still going to die. So where's our focus and emphasis? Jesus told those following him in John 6, you're just following me for the food. And you need to labor and work for the food that endures to everlasting life. He said, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger. You see, we want everybody to have a happy meal when what they need most of all is the bread of life. And we need to guard against this mission drift where we lose sight of who and what it's ultimately all about. We have limited time, opportunities, and resources. We have this one life to do something with it. And so we need to be very deliberate and very intentional, guarding against this drift where we lose sight of who and what it's ultimately all about. What's our belief? What's our cause? What's our purpose? What's our pearl of great price? Because if we lose sight of the why, the what and the how don't matter, because the what and the how aren't going to get done. The love of Christ compels us, and people are lost and dying. How many people would there be like what we've heard today? Christ would change the world if we would take Christ to the world. And if that's not enough why and motivation to move us along and get us going, what's it going to take? And if we're not involved in the business of saving souls, we're missing out on the most important and rewarding work that you could ever be involved in. They say the average Christian has heard 4,000 sermons. We've sang maybe 16,000 songs. And how many people have we helped lead to Christ? We have too many abilities, too many opportunities, too many resources in this room and throughout the brotherhood. And more than that, we have too great a God, too wonderful a Savior, too powerful a message to not get it done. And imagine if every single Christian would lead one person to Christ this year and evangelize and disciple them. Imagine if we would all purpose to give and support evangelism and evangelists locally and throughout the world. If we would implement and adopt a multiplication strategy where every single one of us got involved and did our part. If we would sow bountifully so that we could reap bountifully as God gave the increase, the church would multiply. You see, it usually doesn't come down to can or can't, I have or I haven't. What it usually comes down to is I either will or I won't. And we will have more conversions as we have more conviction. And may God, the giver of the increase, bless us as we strive to go and do to His glory and honor, not our own, and to the benefit and blessing of the world. And let's leave here resolved to be doers of the work today, tomorrow, next week, next month, 6 months from now, between now and the next brotherhood meeting when the enthusiasm often wanes. And let's not leave here hearers only, deceiving ourselves, going our way, and straightway we forget to bait the hooks.
When we began this morning, we stated an objective to try to refocus, to be single-minded as we leave this place with the most important thing on our mind. And I hope that through this day, through these speeches, through these different efforts from these talented individuals, that we've been given information that will allow us to leave here different from when we came this morning. What was on our mind when we came this morning? Was it saving souls? Was it doing our part to evangelize? Whether that be locally or area-wide in our congregations, whether that be in America or in another place in this world. I hope you'll leave with those things very strong on your mind, and that you will be a different person going forward from today in consideration of what Christ wants from you as His disciple. We want to turn the floor over for a moment to Brother Ty Fleming. He's going to discuss with us the perimeters of the Brotherhood meeting, area-wide meeting for next year.
I've got a couple of things I want to do very quickly. One is the Gulf Coast area last fall experienced probably the all-record-setting hurricane damage that we've ever seen in our part of the country. And very quickly, there were a lot of people in our part of the country that mobilized and to try to raise money to try to help some folks. We had about 27 families across the area, not my home congregation, but across the area that had water in their house. Everything from 1 inch to 4 foot plus. It was just very devastating for a lot of folks. In very short order, I know through the efforts of a lot of folks that came from a lot of different places in the United States, there's over $165,000 raised that came through the efforts that we were keeping track of. There were some other funds that came through other efforts. And those brethren have asked me today to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. It is just amazing to work with a group of people like you. Van Miller called me after the deal, was wanting to know about a response from Plainview, that type of thing. And he said, what kind of number do you think we need to be aiming for? And I said, Van, I have no clue. I just know it's widespread damage. You know, any amount's going to help. You know, it's not going to solve every problem. We just don't have that kind of money. And I said, if we raised $60,000, if we raised $80,000, it'd be amazing. And over $165,000. My jaw was dropping from the amount of flow of love and concern from brothers and sisters in Christ. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now to what Brother Van asked me to do, and that is announce next year's area-wide meeting. We've got flyers back on the tables back there. Take one with you. It's got the phone number for the hotel to make a reservation. Let me tell you how this deal works. It's on the north side of Houston, the Sheraton Hotel. The ballrooms of the hotel are going to be where the meeting's held, where you're staying, and we need you to stay at the hotel. Every room that's booked at that hotel helps us to be able to pay for the ballroom and the other amenities that are there at the hotel. So make a reservation. I promise you on our end, we're tracking how many reservations, how many rooms are booked and all that, because it matters in thousands and thousands of dollars as to what we need to do. So we've got this information for you. The phone number to call today, make a reservation. It's available. It tells you who to call, what to ask for, and it gives you the room rate on here as well. We have an amazing, I think, plan for the day. If you are a father, or you will be a father, or you have been a father, or you want to be a father, or anything else related to fathers, women, you want your men there. We are going to talk about fathers. We've got a problem that is kind of universal across, and part of that challenge is elders in the church. Qualified elders in the church. We solve that when we solve a father problem, and that's another challenge that we've got in our homes today, that men will rise up and be men. That's our subject next year. Want to encourage everyone to be there and encourage men, encourage our young boys to be there. We're going to talk about being a man next year. God bless you. We look forward to seeing you on the north side of Houston, near the Intercontinental Airport at the Sheraton Inn Hotel. The dates are July 26th through 28th. July 26th through 28th. Mark your calendars. We look forward to seeing you there. God bless you.
Thank you, Ty. Let's make plans to go and make the meeting next year as successful as possible. Certainly a subject that we need to emphasize and ask our men to step up and be proper fathers. We are sad to announce that Cliff Davis from Plainview fell on the stairs on his way back in after lunch, and Becky had to take him to the hospital to get some stitches where his glasses cut his eye. So we might, in addition to the others we've been praying for today, we might remember Cliff in our prayers. Also, there was a brown billfold that was found in the auditorium. It does not have any kind of identification on it. So if you've lost a brown billfold, as soon as we dismiss, come up here and find me, and I will get that back to the proper owner. We have this facility until 9 o'clock tonight. So if you want to hang around and have fellowship in the foyer area, well, feel free to do that. It's been mentioned that we have extra cookies and extra drinking water back in the entryway. So pick some of that up and take it home with you until it's gone. We want to mention one more time about staying in a motel here in Lubbock that was outside the block. If you did that, one member of the family, if you could go by the registration table and be sure that we get a record on that so we can get a credit against what the cost of this room will be for this year. We want to, in conclusion, just say thank you again to all of the people that helped make this meeting possible. The two congregations, 78th and University Street here in Lubbock, and the Northwest congregation in Plainview. We had many people volunteer to do whatever they could to help. We had plenty of help for every job that was needed. We had some extra help from out of town on our video, on our PowerPoint building, in a lot of different ways. We had a great team that pulled together today to make this a success. And we want to thank every single person that helped. We also want to thank every single person that put out effort to be here. You know, we live in our daily lives at times, and we begin to think that we're all by ourselves in our fight against Satan. Satan has a way of isolating us and getting us alone, and we think we're the only person going through that. I hope when we come together like this and we all continue to put the effort to be together, that's going to strengthen us. That's going to be a bold statement that we are not isolated. We're all in these efforts together. We're all pulling to accomplish the same thing. And when we come and encourage one another, not just by the information we have in the meetings, but by saying hello, renewing old relationships, meeting new people, it's like a huge church reunion of the family of God. And we need to keep putting effort. And thank you so much for putting that effort forth for this year. At this time, we're going to stand together for a closing song. Lyle Miller from Plainview will lead that song, and then following the song, Brother Tim Hutchison from down in Mesquite will come and dismiss us in a word of prayer.